It's the death or the harming of innocents that will radicalize people. There are way more civilians than there are people to deploy. And it isn't going to be, listen, if you think that it's just going to be everyday citizens popping up and showing out, man, I promise you, look at what, if you take a look at what happened during Rodney King, man, you know, it didn't matter what color you had on, everybody united. Okay, what's going on, everybody? It's Kmplxity here with a lasting opinion. A lot of crazy stuff going on in California right now with the ICE raids and protesters becoming militarized. We were seeing a small amount of that back in COVID times. It's become very reminiscent of the LA riots during Rodney King, and some just very dystopian almost, to see how things can boil over almost seemingly overnight. Although of course, you know, things were boiling as it was, but it is crazy to see how everyday streets can turn into a complete war zone. Figured we go ahead and take a look. We're not too political here and everything, but it is something that's popping off right now, and it's just really crazy to see. And you know, we're tapped in here and there, so we might as well take a look, you know, just kind of give our thoughts, because we've gone over certain things on this channel before, and I figured, hey, it's worth taking a look at.
On a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. We begin today's show in Los Angeles, where President Trump has deployed the California National Guard in defiance of California Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles
Jesus, look at them. They're just firing on off. Whew.
Mayor Karen Bass. This comes after protests erupted against ICE's military-style raids in and around L.A. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has also threatened to deploy 500 active-duty Marines from Camp Pendleton. White House.
Shout out to Camp Pendleton. That's where I did my boot camp. I will want to say this, that you can, if you look around currently, it doesn't seem as though there's anybody that potentially has a weapon in the crowd, but there's nothing you can really do to confirm that. You never know when somebody's hiding. They're shooting off, but it doesn't show what they're shooting at. So it seems more so like they're probably just shooting in an effort to disperse the people around. There's a fine line you have to walk. I mean, if anybody who's ever watched a fantastic classic movie called Rules of Engagement, it's basically Samuel L. Jackson. He makes a call to fire into an open crowd out in the Middle East because he is being fired upon by people within the crowd. There's a whole NJP about it. There's a whole USMJC that they go to court and everything like that, and basically he has to prove that he was being shot at, and an effort to justify his return fire, and they're looking for the guns and all that. Anyways, what I'm saying is, in the heat of the moment, it's incredibly difficult to know who your enemy is when they don't, you know, they're not identifiable. Anybody could potentially be an enemy in a mob, in a giant crowd. And even if they don't have any weapons, their body themselves, their hands, their fists, their feet, like those can all become weapons when you're outnumbered. So for anyone who's out there saying, oh, well, they're all unarmed, it's like, you have no idea. And you don't need to be armed to cause harm to people. At the same time, though, I mean, I have seen videos of people who are completely unarmed being shot upon with rubber bullets. You know, the context isn't, you're only seeing snippets, so it's hard to make judgment calls on certain things that we see, but let's continue on.
Advisor Stephen Miller labeled the ICE protests an insurrection. On Sunday, Trump warned this could be just the beginning of deploying troops on U.S. streets.
We're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart.
Earlier today, Trump wrote on social media,
it's easy to say you're not going to let the country be torn apart. I mean, listen, again, not to be too political here, but this man is such a polarizing person. You're either, you know, when you play politics, it's team sports. You're either completely with us or you're completely against us. There's no real in between. There's no middle ground, even though there's supposed to be, you know. Generally, especially online, People will, if you're not as extreme as them, then you're completely to the opposite side.
Really bad in LA, bring in the troops, unquote. California Governor Gavin Newsom plans to sue the Trump administration today. He wrote, quote, commandeering a state's National Guard without consulting the governor of that state is illegal and immoral, unquote. This marks the first time since the 1960s a president's deployed the National Guard without a governor's request. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said Trump is, quote, moving this country rapidly into authoritarianism. California State Senator Scott Wiener said, quote, this is what fascism looks like, unquote. On Sunday, police forces in Los Angeles fired rubber bullets, flashbang grenades, and tear gas at protesters who gathered to condemn the ICE raids and deployment of the National Guard. Sunday night, LA police declared all of downtown Los Angeles an unlawful assembly. Over the past week, federal immigration agents arrested about 118 people in the LA region. On Friday, agents also arrested David Huerta, president of the California branch of SEIU, that's Service Employees International Union. He was charged with obstruction, needed to be treated at the hospital because of his injuries. He remains in custody. On Sunday, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass decried the ICE raids and the Trump administration's response.
What we're seeing in Los Angeles is chaos that is provoked by the administration. When you raid Home Depot and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, and when you run armored caravans through our streets, you cause fear and you cause panic. And deploying federalized troops is a dangerous escalation.
This comes
I mean, I can't disagree with her on that. First and foremost, let's go ahead and get certain things out of the way here, okay? People who are here illegally, let's just be realistic. They wouldn't be here if they weren't employable, right? They wouldn't be here if people weren't willing to employ them. And it always begs the question, why is it that those people are getting arrested and are facing consequences, but the people hiring them aren't facing any consequences, or we're not seeing laws being passed to make things stricter or harsher on people who do this? Because it's like they say, if you build it, then it will come, and if you're willing to go ahead, if the word is out that, you're willing to go ahead and hire illegals, then it is an incentive for illegals to come here more often. I don't have an issue with like safe harbor or with refugee cities that are safe havens and are allowing people to come in through the right channels and shit of that nature. There's nothing wrong with that. But if the incentive isn't there, it will cause a drastic decrease in people coming over illegally, as far as like people who do want both good and bad things for this country, right? It's just the bottom line. We're not hearing about employers, multi-million-dollar companies that employ illegal immigrants getting fines or having their taxes raised. There's no repercussion for creating the system that incentivizes people to come here. Now, regardless of your stance on illegal immigrants, whether you believe we should have completely open borders, stricter borders, anything of that nature, right? It boils down to exactly this. If you are allowing law, if you are punishing the people who are breaking the laws, but not the people who are making it possible for them to break the laws, then you're just going to have a new wave of people breaking the exact same law over and over again. If you really want to cut down on illegal immigration, you should really cut down and make it much more not scarier, but you should make it a bigger punishment for people who hire illegal immigrants. Now, with that being said, let's be realistic. America runs on immigrants, whether illegal or not. Let's be fucking for real, okay? Let's be real.
As Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, has threatened to have Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom arrested if they interfere with federal immigration enforcement. Homan spoke to NBC's Jacob Soboroff.
You cross that line, it's a felony to knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien. It's a felony to impede law enforcement from doing their job.
Do you think that the mayor of LA is doing that?
If she crossed that line, we'll ask the DOJ to prosecute. Do I think she's crossed the line? I don't think she's crossed the line yet. But I'm telling you, the warning we're sending is we're not going to tolerate people attacking our officers.
On Sunday, police in Los Angeles made at least 27 arrests. Officers repeatedly fired rubber bullets at protesters. One hit an Australian journalist as she
Is that a paintball? Whoops. Is that a paintball gun? Oh, it's probably a pepper gun.
was reporting from the streets.
After hours of standing off, this
Yeah, I've seen this one.
situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck up. You okay?
I'm good.
In a minute,
Crazy, because he took aim and
Through
shot.
the heart of LA.
Like, okay, what we're looking at right now, nothing is really going on to cause such an abrupt motion. Immediately took aim and fired for no reason. I wish he would have continued filming the police officer to see how he how he reacted afterwards. She gets shot. And it looks like he just returns to formation, but that is insane. See, that in and of itself, that's bullshit. That's the type of stuff people are gonna see and realize and be radicalized over. You're having somebody who's supposed to be off limits, right? Press is supposed to be off limits. Again, there's certain areas of the world where, not all rules are played, in entirety when it comes to war. It's one of the things that makes fighting the Taliban so incredibly dangerous. But the number one thing, the number one thing is that you don't attack you don't want to attack the medical, and you don't want to attack reporters during certain, during excursions and stuff like that. I mean, when we were in the Middle East, we had reporters being attacked left and right and shit like that, and it just causes it. You lose humanity in it, right? If soldiers are dying, Marines are dying, vice versa on both sides, like, it's an expected thing. But it's innocence it's the death or the harming of innocence that will radicalize people. And I mean, you can say illegal immigrants are innocent, but they broke the law, yada yada yada. But we're seriously talking about somebody who's just reporting, and this person shot at her like it was absolutely nothing. Crazy.
in a minute, we'll go to Los Angeles to speak with one of the people who helped organize the protests against the ICE raids. But first, on Sunday, Democracy Now! Reached Janet Martinez, the co-founder of Indigenous Communities and Leadership, or Cielo, in Los Angeles to talk about the impact of the ICE raids and arrests.
Around 34,000 Indigenous people live in Los Angeles County, which is around 40% of the Indigenous population based on the census data alone, which we know is an undercount. So for us, we know a lot of community members have been impacted by the recent raids by ICE all over Los Angeles. We've gotten calls from the Zapotec community, from the Mixe community, and
that's the other thing too. I guarantee you, well, not guarantee, but it's like, okay, are we going to see all of the paperwork right now? To those of you who are completely for these ICE raids and everything, you're like, we don't need to see the paperwork. The government knows what they're doing. You of all people, okay, if you are for the deportation of illegal immigrants, you should be more for transparency and seeing the paperwork of these people proving that they are illegal than the left side or the opposition who believes that they shouldn't be getting deported. Why? Because if you are for the government having this level of oversight and being able to do these mass raids and such, you're going to want them to be doing it on a legal level, right? You're going to want them them to actually be making sure that the people that they are deporting are breaking the law, are here illegally, and that it can't be your neighbor, right? Because a lot of people are looking at this as just the color of the people being deported. But if those of you who are in 100% agreement with mass deportation, you should be the ones wanting as much transparency as possible. Because if you're okay with little to no transparency and mass deportations, guess what? It might be your neighbor next, regardless of the neighborhood you live in, even if it's gated. So that's my take on this, right? I'm not saying here that, oh, you know, this shouldn't be, I mean, well, obviously this rioting and the back and forth shouldn't be happening, but regardless if you are for or against, mostly if you are for, you should be the ones calling for as much transparency as possible. Because if you're okay with this level of overreach, well, this level of, I really don't want to call it overreach, but if this level of deportation, this level of mass deportation, you of all people should be wanting as much transparency as possible. Otherwise, it's in your backyard next.
Quiche communities that have been detained during these raids.
For more, we are joined in Los Angeles by Ron Gochez, community organizer with Unión del Barrio, and a high school history teacher. His group helped organize some of the protests in Los Angeles. There's so much to discuss, Ron. Can you describe the weekend? It didn't even start with the protests. You had President Trump threatening to cut off aid to California, federal aid. You had the ICE raids, and then talk about what happened even before then Trump announced that he would deploy the National Guard, and Hegseth said he's put the Marines on high alert.
See, that's a recipe for disaster right there. You're threatening to take away aid from a state, and then you're moving into these mass deportations. So it's pretty much like, hey, if you don't let us do this, say goodbye to the help that we're gonna give your state. Like, come on, man, it's a gun to the head. It's an ultimatum. We're going to take away our relief efforts from you, or and we're going to be doing these mass deportations. Now, you could sit back and let this happen and that relief will still keep coming. But if you get too noisy, we might have to take it back. So it's a gun to the head.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me today. This weekend was marked with absolute and total violence, brutal repression, and attacks, coordinated attacks against our community. ICE agents have been around all over Southern California, kidnapping people, tearing apart families, and we see this as an attack against our people. And so that's why you see young people, the community coming out and resisting this repression. We are tired, sick and tired of these attacks that are dividing and separating our families. And so that's why when we have these protests, they have been peaceful, but when the repression comes from the state, whether it's the sheriffs, the LAPD, or on Saturday, for example, in Paramount, California, it was the Border Patrol, it was brutal violence. They shot thousands of rounds of tear gas, of flashbang grenades, of all kinds of repressive instruments used against the community, but what they didn't think was going to happen was that the people would resist and would fight back. And that's exactly what happened in Paramount and in Compton, California, where for...
Let's just be real here. Let's just be 100%. Regardless if you're to or fro, there are way more civilians than there are people to deploy. That's just the bottom line, okay? There are more civilians than there are cops, and then there are military personnel, okay? And reserves and everything like that. Way more civilians than there are those who are in some form of government, right? When it comes to policing, whether it's the military or whether it's actual police, right? FBI, all of those put together doesn't even touch the civilian population. So if it does become some sort of all-out war, it's one, it's gonna be bloody, but two, wars ain't being fought like they used to be. Let's just say that.
8.5 hours, the people combated in the streets against the Border Patrol. And after 8.5 hours of battle, and it was a battle because there were people throwing back tear gas, people throwing anything that they could to defend themselves and to defend the workers that were being surrounded by over 100 Border Patrol agents. After 8.5 hours, the Border Patrol, the sheriffs had to retreat. They had to retreat because of the fierce resistance of the community, and the hundreds of workers that were in the factories around them were able to escape. They were able to go to their cars and go home. That was only thanks to the resistance that allowed them to go home that night. And so that is one clear sign that if we organize ourselves, if we resist, we can defend our communities from ICE terror, from the Border Patrol, or from any federal agency that wishes to separate our families. And so because of that, while that was happening, while that resistance was happening, we saw President Trump give the order of the National Guard. And so for us as indigenous people to these lands, to this continent, this is nothing new. The military going after us is nothing new. The United States and this part of the country is a result of a military invasion of Mexico. And so we know what's coming. It's more repression, but what they have to know is that they're also going to face more resistance from the community. We don't want to be violent, and we don't advocate for violence, but when they use brutal violence against our people, and kidnapping mothers and fathers from children is violent, when they do things like that, we have every right, every historic right to defend our communities by any ways that we can, and we're going to continue to do so.
And Ron, you mentioned Paramount on Saturday. For those people who are not familiar with that town south of Los Angeles, there's also been a change in the Trump administration tactics. Originally, they claimed they were going after criminals. Now, increasingly, they're being pushed to increase the arrest numbers, so they're hitting workplaces. So could you talk about this change and how this is affecting the community?
Yeah, the fascist Trump administration is trying to lie and confuse the American people into supporting this repression, into supporting these immigration raids by having the general public think that they're going after criminals. But now what's publicly known, what's painfully clear, is that the majority of these raids are going after workers, working class people. They're not going after criminals. They're going at Home Depots. They're going at construction sites. They're going to factories where people are working, where they're creating the resources necessary for this society to exist. And so I think everyone now knows that it's a lie. They're going after anyone and everyone who has brown skin specifically. And, they're attacking pretty much anybody. You have the Asian community. You have black immigrants under attack. You have anybody in this country who isn't a white male, basically, who is under attack. So I think working people everywhere should see this as an attack on working class people, and they should all unite in solidarity to repel these attacks against our community. And so again, we've proven time and time again, when we organize ourselves, we can defend ourselves. At this moment, it's 5.
I mean, let's be real. It's way easier to find a working class man than it is to find a criminal. Way fucking easier. You're popping up on the Home Depot construction sites, landscaping areas, fucking, your local landscaper who rolls around with his trailer and shit like that. They probably weren't able to find a whole lot of criminals, like illegal criminals. So that's why they changed it up, and they wanted to actually pump up those numbers and show some real results. And so that's why they started going after everyday citizens. Well, regardless if they're illegal or not, right? Everyday citizens and people who are contributing to consumerism, people who are contributing to the workforce, people who are contributing to taxes and shit like that. And it seems like, I would imagine, because of how difficult it is to find criminals hiding and shit like that, that they wanted to do it for their numbers. Again, this really all boils down to on whether or not you believe, what should be done with illegal immigrants.
5:30 or so in Los Angeles, or 5 in the morning in Los Angeles. We already have people all over Los Angeles right now patrolling the streets of Los Angeles looking for any ICE activity. That's the work that we do on a daily basis to protect our communities. So on one hand, there's street protests, and those are important, but the other part is organized and coordinated resistance by patrolling our streets, defending our streets. We can't protect the entire city of Los Angeles, but in our neighborhoods, in our barrios, we can defend ourselves, and we are doing that.
And it's crazy that Trump wasn't willing to do this for the January 6th riots, man. Absolutely astonishing. But because it was his people, right, who he considers to be his people, whether it's off of complexion or the way they vote, you know, he doesn't. And then he turns around and wants to call the FBI corrupt for investigating the January 6ers and locking them up, even though they committed federal crimes as well. So it's like, dude, this is why team sports is so fucking stupid, man. People be out here willing to die for something that they don't even understand, putting citizens in the front lines, be marionetted and shit like that. And everybody, it's easy for people to come together for a common goal, but if there's one way that you really unite people, it's through fear and anger. That, like, you give people something, you give people a boogeyman, you give people something to be scared of, and they'll unite against it. I mean, look at what is allowed to occur in the name of fighting terrorism. Big Brother happened because of, in the name of fighting terrorism, and look at what happened there. People realizing that their phones were being tapped, their emails were being saved, their text messages were being combed through and collected, and all this craziness in the name of preventing the next, 9/11.
And what is your sense of the response of California's Governor Newsom and also the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, so far?
Yeah, we understand that they're against what's happening, but we also have to say that talk is cheap. Governor Newsom can order the National Guard to stand down. If he's against President Trump using them against us, well, he can order them to stand down. He has not done so. Here in the city of Los Angeles, Karen Bass is saying that she's against the raids that are happening. Well, why are her police officers aiding and collaborating with ICE, with the Border Patrol, to attack the community? If they are really there to serve and protect, as it says on their vehicles, then those rubber bullets and that gas that they're shooting right now, they're aiming at the wrong people. It shouldn't be aimed at us. It should be aimed at the agents who are trying to kidnap the people in our community. But obviously, we know we cannot expect help or support from the police, from the sheriffs here in Los Angeles. Even though we live in a state that is run by a Democrat as a governor, we have a Democratic
yeah, Newsom's definitely a Democrat. Like, come on, Matt. Newsom's a fucking joke.
Party mayor, we have Democratic Party council members. We cannot expect for them to defend the people. Only the people will organize and defend themselves, and that's what we're doing right now.
Ron Goetschers, this is a very interesting point.
And it isn't going to be, listen, if you think that it's just going to be everyday citizens popping up and showing out, man, I promise you, if you take a look at what happened during Rodney King, man, motherfuckers all came from don't matter what flag you were, rolling in, whether blue, red, white, and blue, it didn't matter what color you had on, everybody united, okay? And ish like this is gonna do the same thing. You got motherfuckers coming in full tactical gear, making moves through the city like they shit on, like we on some Fallout type of stuff. And people gonna put their beef aside, okay? I'm just saying, some flags may get tied. If you don't know, you gonna find out. If you don't know what that means, I promise you gonna find out. Eventually, it's gonna stop being this peaceful level of protest, right? This just getting in their way, and then eventually some people are going to be popping out and be shooting their own shit. Like, it happens, and it seems like that's kind of what they're going for. It seems like they're trying to make that pot melt more and more until they're able to, and until they're able to say that it's a state of emergency, and then he's given more free reins over posting more people and sending more people in. I'm not entirely sure, right? That's just my take. I mean, considering it started out by the threat of taking aid away and then started doing the ICE raids, it seems like this is tactical, and that's just me. That's conspiracy brain complexity. But I don't know, man. Seen enough seen enough flags tied in my day in order to know that if you can get certain people to come together, you the one who done fucked up.
Because it was being portrayed in different ways yesterday when the LAPD moved in and was clearing people from away from, was it Alameda, the Federal Building. In some media reports, they were saying they were clearing protesters away so that they wouldn't be directly confronting the National Guard, which the mayor has criticized. You know, the National Guard in full, what they say, full battle rattle. But you're saying that although Governor Newsom may sue today, he could actually tell the National Guard to stand down. And do you see any possibility of the LAPD confronting the National Guard and maybe, if Hegseth calls out the Marines on the streets?
No, we don't anticipate that at all. I have personally been physically removed from an ICE raid here in South Central Los Angeles by the LAPD. So when the mayor says that the LAPD doesn't collaborate with ICE or with federal agencies, it's a total lie. While you may not have
it's a chain of command.
LAPD officers on the streets asking people for their citizenship or detaining people for immigration reasons, what you do have is the LAPD, the LA County Sheriffs, the CHP, or any law enforcement agency that's here locally. They are collaborating, they are protecting the operations. They close down the streets around operations so that ICE can do their kidnappings of our people. And so that is a direct collaboration. And here in Los Angeles, if it wasn't for the repression of the LAPD, of the LA County Sheriffs, you would have thousands of more people who would be resisting against these ICE raids. But it is the police, it is the sheriffs who are basically protecting the operations and protecting everything that's happening against our community.
And that is what happens. I mean, like I was saying, it is a chain of command. So you have the LAPD, who obviously is the locals. They're the local Leos. They're the ones who are taking, they're the ones who do the general policing. Then when you have a branch above that come in, like the FBI or the National Guard or anything of that nature, they're basically, they become they all become traffic cops at that point. You know, they close places off. They're the ones who allow for the they do the barricading, the clearing out. They're the ones who allow for the higher ranking officials to come through and do what they got to do. It happens all the time. They play second fiddle basically. But can you call it collaboration? I would say collusion. No, because you're, at the end of the day, you're following orders. You're following your job. You have the ability. All people have the ability to turn down any orders that they find to be unlawful. Especially in the military, you're allowed to refuse an order that you find to be unlawful. But it's just one of those things where, like, you can't, man. It boils down to how you feel about illegal immigrants, man. Because the police, they want to protect the streets, they want to protect the people, but at the same time, they are the ones that are getting in the way. It's unfortunate to see this, but I think that, especially like the Oregon riots, I think that this is just going to keep going, and hopefully it doesn't hit that melting pot. Hopefully something behind the scenes gets worked out, but it definitely seems like it's going somewhere.
Do we anticipate?
It seems like it's going to a state of unrest.
Do we expect the police to join our side? No. But what we can say is that a lot of those police officers here in Los Angeles, a lot of those sheriffs, and a lot of those National Guardsmen and even Marines, if they come here, A lot of them are Mexican, are Central American, are the sons and daughters of immigrants. In fact, here in Los Angeles, there's hundreds of LAPD officers who are DACA, meaning they're undocumented as well. And so they have to see that they're being used by the Trump administration to use violence against their own people. So we as Unión del Barrio do call on them to stand down. Do not raise your weapons against your own people. This is like your mother, your auntie, your father that you're repressing. So we do call on them to join us, stand on the right side of history. Do not support the Trump administration, support the people. Because what we're doing is fighting for justice. We're fighting for the righteous, the right to live and to exist and to work and to feed our families. There's nothing extreme about that. We just simply want to work, we want to live, and we want to have a dignified life like anyone else deserves. So we're seeing resistance right now from the people in Gaza, resisting and fighting for their lives, to us right here on our own historic homeland, our indigenous land here. We're fighting for our lives as well. And
I figured eventually that was going to be tied in. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I imagine like all the crazy gods and extreme psychopathic bloodthirsty lefties out there are having a field day with this, like all the Hassan Pikers of the world.
And we're going to continue to do so, whether it's the police, the National Guard. We don't want violence. We don't want violence. But we also aren't going to sit by and see our people be kidnapped and see our community be attacked by any federal agency or local law enforcement. We won't do it.
Ron, what's happening?
I mean, do you think that it's okay for the government to be able to have that type of power to just bust down your door, even though you've been here 10 years plus, paying taxes, doing all this shit, putting your time, effort, and lives, creating a whole home here for yourself, and being able to take you just because you crossed over, under the fence rather than through it? It's becoming a war zone out there, man. It's becoming a war zone out there.
Happening to those who've been detained. Angelica Salas, the executive director of the immigrant rights group Churla, said lawyers don't have access to people detained Friday. Have they been released? What's their status? And do you know about the status of David Huerta, the head of
I imagine they're making it incredibly difficult for lawyers to be able to get in contact with people.
SEIU, the Service Employees International Union? We heard he was sent to the hospital with injuries and he's been detained.
Yeah, what we know right now is there's no due process for the majority of the people. People who get detained, we have reports, and we have confirmed reports that people who get picked up in the morning in Los Angeles, by the same day in the evening are already in Mexico City. That is confirmed. You cannot.
Yeah, and see, that's what I was talking about. If you are for these raids and everything, you should be the loudest, most vocal people about due process and about having everything be as open and transparent as possible. Otherwise, it could be you, it could be someone in your family, it could be your neighbor. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I'm not illegal. I was born here. I was born here. I'm not illegal. And it's like, okay, but if you don't know, then they're potentially throwing people back who aren't illegal also, then how in the hell can you sit there so high and mighty believing it can't happen to you? If you're not a loud vocal majority of wanting everything to be done by the book, be done correctly, and being sure that it truly is the illegal people who are not here without citizenship being tossed back, then you're an issue. You're a problem. You can sit there and say, "Oh, just get all the brown people out," or I trust the government. They're illegal. Like, come on, are you serious? You ain't never lied to your kids before or some shit? You ain't never told a lie? You really think that the government's telling you everything? Come on now. I think that what's going to end up happening is exactly what happened during the first rounds of ICE people when this first popped off. Like a year or two ago, where they were deporting people, and it's going to end up being that they're deporting people who have citizenship, who are here legally, who have been here working here for, you know, countless decades, years, and have multiple family tree lines and shit like that. I think that as time goes on, there's going to be more, there's going to be a good amount of reports of people who have legal citizenship being deported.
Have due process in less than 24 hours. It's absolutely impossible. And so people are just being shipped immediately, across the border and to many places. We have confirmed cases of Mexican citizens, Mexican nationals who have been deported to Guatemala and dumped into Guatemala, a country that they have never been to and don't belong in. And so,
and that was going to be the other thing too. It's like, if you truly are just going after, you know, anybody that's brown, man, there's a lot of brown countries out there, bro. You can't be tossing somebody who was in Tijuana out in Guatemala or something. You can't be tossing no Mexican out in Colombia or something like that, or vice versa. That whole other different types of brown. Like, damn. Nah, but I imagine there's going to be more reports of this too, where, you know, you have people who are being deported to certain countries that their nationality is not. And it's like, okay, like, what else can you really call that other than some racism? We're just gonna be like, well, they, you know, out of the 100 or so people that they deported, only about like 17 or 30 of them were, you know, sent to the wrong place. You know, they just got mixed up in the rush. Crazy.
that's what's happening on the ground here in Los Angeles. Yesterday or Saturday, I don't know, today, it's just been one long day of resistance for us. But, elected officials have gone to the detention center where hundreds of our people are being kept, and they demanded to be allowed to enter so that they can view the conditions that the people are living in. Places like these are basements that have no restrooms, they have no sanitary conditions for the people. There's not enough food and water for the people. Those are the reports that we're getting. They were denied entry. They were not allowed to see inside to see how these people are being treated. So it's a real crisis right now for our community, and that's why we don't want to wait until our people are kidnapped and taken into detention to take action. That's why we do community patrols every day in the morning around our communities to try to prevent our people from being kidnapped. And when we say kidnapped, that is the exact word that we need to use, because the state is using brutal violence to separate us, to take us against our will from our families, from our homes.
And man, see, we were just talking about like this in, what was it, Paris or something not too long ago? Like riots were happening all over the world, like civil unrest and everything. And now we're seeing the same thing here on our own streets.
Our jobs and to take us somewhere else. So that by definition is a kidnapping, and that's what we're fighting against, because we know that our people are they're not gonna have due process if lawyers and elected officials aren't being allowed to enter detention facilities to see their conditions that the people are living in. What makes us think that the people inside are gonna have any type of human rights? We know that it's not happening.
And Ron, I wanted to ask you about President Trump's calling in of the.
Yeah, this is sounding more like a a late night search and seizure type of deal than anything else.
Of the National Guard, the use of flashbang grenades, of rubber bullets, of tear gas against the protesters. A reminder that back on January 6th, when a mob stormed the Capitol and tried to prevent the certification of election, there was no use of flashbang grenades or of tear gas or of rubber bullets against that mob. And yet here,
against that insurrection, let's call it what it is.
It has been used, and the president is claiming there's an insurrection.
Of course he is.
Yeah, we know that the violence is going to be against us, against our community. And, sometimes people think, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's just a little bit of tear gas. No, we've seen people be seriously injured. On Saturday in Compton, California, when we were there on the front lines of the resistance against the sheriffs and against the Border Patrol, we saw a guy standing in front of us who got hit in the face with I don't know if it was a rubber bullet or what it was, but his face was completely split open and he was just gushing blood everywhere. These things can be lethal. If these rubber bullets hit you in the eye, if they hit you in the right place, they can absolutely be lethal.
Which is 100% true.
And so we understand.
Just the same way as a flashbang can be lethal too if it hits you in the right spot.
Understand that the violence
or if you like falls right next to you, or you know on top of you or whatever. Like, yeah, less lethal just doesn't less lethal doesn't always mean, it doesn't mean not, you know, lethal. It just means less likely. That's all it means.
Is being used against us is lethal. We understand that the violence is being used against us on a daily basis, whether it's by the Border Patrol or the police. It's violence against the community, and so we have every right to defend ourselves by any means necessary, because that is the livelihood, the well-being of our families is what's at stake. Children have been gassed here in Los Angeles, and so we, whether it's the National Guard, whether it's the local police, we have to resist this, because in Los Angeles, we clearly understand what's happening. The Trump administration is trying to make an example of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the heart of the Mexican and Central American community here in the United States.
That's facts.
And so they think that if they can break us, they can break anyone in the country. And so we understand that. And that's what we know. We cannot afford to fail. The resistance will continue. Whether they keep threatening us or not, we will continue. We will be peaceful every time that we can. But if we...
And speaking on peaceful, I have yet to hear of any reports of like protesters shooting at cops or anything like that. It's entirely possible that there are reports. I just haven't heard any of them, but it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see, because we have to remember that on January 6th, the insurrectors, the rioters, the psychopathic, bloodthirsty criminals who attacked the Capitol and all that, they did attack police. They did hurt the people who were there. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no way that the police or National Guard isn't in some way, shape, or form going to get injured, but it'll be interesting to see if it was unprovoked or in like in retaliation or something. It'll be interesting to see the reports that come out, but still, yeah,
we face violence that where we have to defend ourselves. We have every human right to do so as well.
Democracy Now! Is funded.
It is interesting, you guys. It's crazy what's going on. I'm not exactly sure, you know, I don't have the answers and you don't have the answers. Let's be realistic here. But it all just depends on what side of this conflict you fall on. You know, hope the best for these people. Hope the best for the, you know, shout out to the protesters who are willing to put themselves, you know, their body in between what they believe to be an injustice and victims. You know, not a lot of people will put their money where their mouth is and put themselves on the front line in an effort to stop something that they find to be wrong. So gotta give it to them, that's for sure. It is, yeah. Well, guys, that's been me. You know, somber take, you know, somber feeling here, guys. It's terrible. It's terrible situation that's going on. Incredibly reminiscent of the LA riots back in the day, the Rodney King riots, and it definitely looks like at some point in time a state of emergency is going to be called and some flags going to be nodded. Okay, we'll have to wait and see. Let's hope that it disperses before then. But I've been your host, Kmplxity. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Chaos brews inside the room. Voices of contention blooms. The king's eyes filled with boiling rage. Zeph steps up to the high stage. Explode the silence, break the chains. Never been a better name in the game. In this blood cast fiery flame, words like bullets in your brain.